Hello, everybody. Daniel Johnson from VENZA here from our Dutch office, and welcoming you to this webinar. This is our April webinar. The topic is layered security. As you can see, there's a hold on Sean Shield's desktop that says this is time for the webinar taping, layered security. So we could probably close that there. Very good. So we are glad you're here. We have got as is the usual for our webinars at VENZA, we like to keep them short and concise, to the point, and we always want to make sure that they are relevant to hospitality's needs. So we've got a presenter. David Neel is here to represent CyberTek MSSP. He's the CIO of CyberTek MSSP, and they are a VENZA company. So we're very pleased to have David here and presenting. And we also have a couple of industry experts, which is always the case. We want to make sure that these gentlemen are going to keep David honest, make sure that he's sharing information that is relevant, pertinent to the hospitality industry. So before we get to you, David, let's find out who these gentlemen are. Jim, we'll start on the western side of the Atlantic Ocean. Jim Stark, do you mind introducing yourself?
Not at all. My name is Jim Stark. I'm the CTO for a hospitality management company in North America. We're located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we operate about 60 right now facilities across the Midwest.
Very nice. Has spring sprung there in South Dakota yet?
It's springing.
Okay.
It has had a couple shivery mornings in the 30s, but then tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 80s.
Yeah.
So
I've got some family in the
remote control.
got some family neighboring over there in Minnesota next to you, and it's been up and down, but that's, I guess, par for the course there.
Beautiful.
Good to have you, as always.
Thank you.
Joining us here on the eastern side of the Atlantic, Sven. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, Sven?
Yeah, my name is Sven Stoklassa. I'm working for the Deutsche Hospitality, Steigenberger Hotels AG. We are currently operating 150 hotels. And I'm one of the system architects of the hotel group.
Okay.
So it's often my job.
Yeah,
to
good. Very good. Well, we're very glad to have both of you gentlemen, and for those that were able to tune in to our InfoSec Invitational competition, we have the champion with us. So Sven is the global champion of that competition. He is the reigning champion. So yes, indeed. So we are. You got your work cut out for you, David. I mean, now you're getting anything past these gentlemen. So tell us a little bit about yourself, David, and then feel free to launch into your presentation.
Okay, my name is David Neel. I have been in IT since 1982. First IT job was 82. A paid job at that. That wasn't working for mom. That was actually working for a manufacturer. In that, over the last several years, we spun up a MSP 24 years ago and have recently been acquired and now part of the family of VENZA. CyberTek Engineering is now known as CyberTek MSSP. And in that, we've had the opportunity of carrying customers from where they started in the 80s and 90s, carrying those through and watch the evolution of IT and security. And we've done that for companies all over the U.S. With that, we've seen a lot of changes in the years. I can ask anybody online, and if you would have told the CEOs of the company in 2019 that we're going to send all of your staff home and they're going to be as productive, but they're going home. How many of the IT managers would have said, oh, that's just BS, there's no way. And you're going to be doing all of your meetings via Zoom that you don't have yet. And we're going to completely disrupt your network. In the old days, and there's some gray hair here, that would remember the old days of IT. We measured things at what was called castle mentality. And the castle mentality rule was you built high walls and deep moats, and that's how you kept people away. Well, what do you do when all of your people leave the protection of your castle? You're still expected to keep them safe. And so that in 2020, that became a very big thing for us. And that brought along a lot of the conversation that we're going to try to get into now called layered security. Layered security, depending upon which school of education you came from, layered security is also referred to as defense in depth. So depending on where you came from, those are the same term. But let's talk about what that means. In the world of defense in depth or layered security, what it means is you are putting an obstacle between somebody and your gold. So the analogy being, and we're going to talk about it, the home analogy, we're putting things in the middle that will trip up the bad guys so that they don't have easy access to your stuff on the inside. Why do we do that? Well, in the old days, going back to castle mentality, I came from the world of the dinosaur pen. We had mainframes and dumb terminals. Well, we put the mainframe in a big glass room, and that's where everything was. You had to have a key to get in the room, and if you were on the outside, they just had a dumb terminal. They couldn't actually steal your data because they were screen scraping. That's all they had. They didn't have the databases. So we didn't have to have a very big depth of security. We just had to have one key, and if you could get into that room, you were allowed in, and that was about it. The internet was not a thing. So our defense was who had the key. And if you had the key, well, then you could get into the room, but then you still had to sign in. What was the password? What was the user ID? That was the defense. Now, coming back to the scenario of 2020, when we were protecting the world of our global information in the servers or in the farms that we were creating in-house in our IT room behind locked doors, well, what do you do when all of your users left the building and they were probably taking a lot of your data home with them that you are now responsible for, that is now sitting on their machine that their kids are going to use because it's the fastest machine in the house, and at night while you're sleeping, they're playing Fortnite on business machines that the company is paying for. And oh yeah, by the way, all those items on the desktop are probably meant for confidentiality, not for every kid playing Fortnite. So the world of defense in depth or layered security has changed dramatically in the last 2 years. So going on with that, I'd like to move down to number 2. Layers of security are like what I refer to as layers of toilet paper. It sounds great, but sooner or later you end up with cardboard. And that just takes away the whole purpose of what you're trying to create, and you've made something that is unusable, is probably going to chafe you, and is probably not going to meet what it is you have intended for the process to be. So another word I'm going to throw out is, if you get into certain criteria or you get into certain schools of thought, they will throw out a word called controls. So when you are developing a layered security, you are implementing controls. A control could be as simple as a gate. And Sean, if you would, I'd like you to show us the gate. If everybody can see this,
Yeah.
This will be a classic control. If you put a control in and you don't think...
Sven's laughing. Good. Yep. That's effective.
Yeah, that gate is a control. You are trying to control the traffic. But if you don't think about what you're doing, you are creating a control that's absolutely worthless. It does do a function, and you could say, yes, I am in a gated residence. But if they go around your gate, that control is doing you no good.
Yeah.
So when we start talking about layers, just because you're adding layers doesn't necessarily give you better defense. what a layer can do is become an obstacle, and if it's the wrong control, your users are going to go around it. They will find a way. If you have told them that they could reset their password, they may figure out, well, yeah, I got to set my password, but you're only recording 2 passwords, so they put in the same password 3 times, and then they go back to what they had originally, and you've defeated the purpose by creating a soft control. So here's what and when we teach this class to people that are coming through this for the first time, here's what I'd like you to think about. We can get involved with huge acronyms, and we can turn this into a TLA, 3-letter acronyms all day long, and nobody will understand what I'm saying except for maybe 2 or 3 people. So let me turn this around and make defense in depth something you can visualize in your head and something you can think about when you go home and start thinking about, how am I protecting things from a very simplistic point? Let's say you have a house or a home or an apartment. You have found something, and Sean, show me picture number 2. Let's say you go out into your garage and you find a painting. It's just a painting. You picked it up down at the local garage sale, and you've realized, I like this painting. It's a nice painting. It suits the man cave. And it is in your house. And you know, it's your house. You have locks on the doors. They're sometimes locked, maybe not always. But this is the painting you have hanging up in your man cave. And then somebody of knowledge comes to you and says, do you know what that is? And you're like, no. Well, that's actually, that is, yeah, 2 guys, that is, the actual name of the painting is called The Card Players. It's worth $264 million.
Chump change.
Chump change. Now is when layered defense comes into play. You have a $29 lock that you bought down at Home Depot on your front door. Is that front door enough? Would you think that maybe I need to increase my security practices a little bit? Maybe I may even hire somebody to watch this painting with a gun to make sure nobody comes in and steals it. I need to make sure that people don't know who I am. They don't know my address. They don't know that I have this painting. I have to obfuscate my information online so they don't know who I am. Because now I have an asset in my control that I have to build a defense around. Now, the flip side of this conversation is the bad guy. If the bad guy goes down to the street, yes, thank you, Sean, if you go back to the original. If the bad guy goes down the street and he sees your facility with barred screens, 2 guards standing at the front door, and barbed wire rolls around your house, do you think that maybe he would become interested? Absolutely. Yeah. Why are you putting up such a defense? What value do you have on the inside that you are protecting people from getting to you on the outside? So controls go both ways. You don't want to advertise that, hey, I'm going to put up something of huge value on the inside by putting it on the by putting up a layered defense on the outside that is noticeable. So when you start looking at the home analogy, what happens to the gold value if it goes up? When the cost of your data becomes valuable, the cost of your protection cannot exceed the cost of the data or the information you have. So those are one of the 2 rules you have to look at. It doesn't make sense if I have a $264 million painting sitting in my bar to put up $1 million worth of defense. So there is a limit, and that's where I go back to the toilet paper turning into cardboard. You can go well beyond the actual value of the process that you are working for and turn it into something that it should not be. And I would be amiss if I didn't say the magic word here is budgets. Your bosses are not going to let you spend $1 million to cover a $264 million product. And in a lot of our worlds, people think, well, I just want to turn on 2FA or MFA, multi-factor authentication. Doesn't cost as much. There's a little bit of an implementation schedule, but you can do that. You have to look at the control, protecting the asset, and then determining the value of that. But one of the things is you have to know the value of your painting. What is the value of your data that you are protecting? That will have a direct impact on the number of controls you put in place. Mm-hmm. How about some questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I want this toilet paper cardboard analogy that you provided. I'm wondering if Jim and Sven, I mean, is this ringing true to you guys? Is this resonating with you and the the conspicuous controls actually doing more damage than good? Not enough controls. The gate that is a control that is easily skirted around. Jim, would you mind just chiming in a little bit?
Sure. Absolutely, it's a real thing, because as we improve security, multi-factor authentication, you got to change your passwords now every 2 weeks. They got to be 15 characters. We can make things secure, but if the users get frustrated or start writing their passwords down on a Post-it note or going around the gate, what good did you spend the money that was hard to get and didn't really accomplish anything? One of the coolest things I saw one time was in a distribution center. We had a terminal that was shared by different people, and of course we would lock the screen on it with a timeout. And we made all that, and they'd go into timeout mode, and that frustrated them because they'd always have to go log back in again. And the coolest thing they did was they took a mouse, put it on a slanted board, hooked the cord, taped it to an oscillating fan that they had in there, so the mouse kept moving. What security?
Beat the control. Beat the control.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So you got to look at the end user and the end result. You got to look at the cardboard to make sure it's really what you wanted.
I hope they're that ingenious with the work that they're supposed to do and bring that creativity for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Sven, how about you? Is this resonating with you?
It's the same. I've found out here. The more secure we are making systems, like as Jim said, in screen lock or in screen lock timeout or so, users find a way to go around. Or if you make it so secure that no one can work it, I don't know if this is a target of the security. The screen lock timeout, we had 2 users indeed which installed started a small program which emulates the mouse to move all 10 seconds or so. So no screen lock comes, and
the mouse is continuing to move. Crazy.
Yep.
Very great. What else you got for us, David? Yeah.
Okay. So did you have something else?
What's that, Sven?
It's the best. You know all the Simpsons.
Yeah.
As Homer is working at home with the bird, which is ticking key and yes and yes and yes.
Yes, shows that he's actually working. Very good.
Yep. Keystrokes per hour is very consistent. Yes. So with that, once you start thinking about defense in depth, you can get into that. Let's say in the home, you start thinking, oh, well, I'll get a outside security company and I'll do this, and I'll get thicker walls and I'll put in bigger windows or more secure windows and triple pane glass and all of this. And I start looking at all these things and I add up all these costs. What am I doing? Am I actually meeting the expectation of protecting the asset, or am I just spending money? Like Jim said, money is hard to get. So here's where I always try to start people. There's 3 points in IT that you need to look at: the outside, the inside, and the user. You should have at least 2 coverages of a control in each one of those. That gives you 6 layers of defense. Let's say number 1, start from the outside in, because the bad guys always try to get in. From the outside in, the first thing you should always have is a mail filter. That's a layer of defense. You are taking away statistically about 80% of the threat by running a nice email filter, because that is removing the control is outside of your network, it's outside of your facility, and you're getting rid of those things as far away as you can. You don't want to fight the theft of your painting in your house. You want to fight that as far away as you possibly can, because then you have more time to be able to put in other controls. They beat the first one, now let's put in the second one. So we always try to look as far away as possible. So starting on the outside, number one is you are putting in some type of mail rules to be able to stop the bad stuff. The second thing is you want coming in to the next stop is usually their firewall. At your firewall, you want to be using geo-blocking or some type of content that you are blocking of keeping bad guys away. Denial of service, IPS, you can do a lot of different things from the outside. That gives you two layers. You are protecting then what is on the inside of your world. On the inside of your network, you want to VLAN if at all possible. You want to segment your traffic so that if something does happen in one department or in one section, you are not allowing those people to easily come across all VLANs from the inside of your network. Second thing you want on the inside is you want an endpoint protector that will work even if that node goes outside of your network. So if you are only protecting a machine because they're behind your firewall and your rules, what happens in our world of mobility now that half of our staff is working from home? Even though they are physically locating inside our network from a VPN, they are actually outside of our network through the VPN, so we need to protect them as if they are inside. So that would give you two different rules there. Now, those four rules are fantastic and easy to implement, and everybody on this call can manipulate technology. The last two are people.
It's the big butt. That's the big butt in your statement, right?
And that's the one where they're going to figure out how to move the mouse. They're going to figure out how to break your controls so that they are able to do two things. One, they will find a way to enhance their ability to do work if work is what they're after. If it's gaming, you have a bigger challenge. If it is mining Bitcoin, it's a bigger challenge. But those people, you have to work two sides of things. One is you need to segregate them from as much as possible. I'm a zero trust guy. You need to make sure they're not in groups they don't need to be. The controls are there. Are you taking those people and moving them into places where they can function and do their job, but they do not have extended rights to get into other things? You need to segregate their traffic, preferably on the VLAN that they need to be working on, and they don't need to be moving into the administrative VLAN. The second thing, and by far what I consider one of the top two in overall, is educating your staff. They have to know where the boundaries are. They have to know that you are putting these controls in for their protection and their ability to stay employed. If they allow a ransom to come into the company and wipe out the company, you don't want them to say, well, I didn't know. They may say it anyway, but you need to be educating the staff on a monthly basis so that they understand what is expected, what are the rules, and what are the controls that are in place to protect them so that bad things don't occur. That could be education, you could do phishing, you can do a bunch of different things to just get them, because those are the end users that will click on the link to allow the bad guy to come in and say, I'm here from Microsoft, I'm only here to help. Those things will happen, and if they don't know what to expect, they may be the one that allows the guy to come through all of your controls, and now you have to fight them from within your bedroom or in the bar with your painting because they're trying to get out with it. So look at those 3 points: outside, inside, and people. And then the two limits on all of those: time and money. How fast do you need to implement, and how much money do you have to do it? Those are your only limits. You can put in more and more stuff. And Sean, if you would throw up that last slide, just be aware there's always more layers coming. The layers in the defense that we have today has nothing to do what was 5 years ago a standard of best practices. And I can tell you, I don't know what they will be in 5 years from now, but they are not what we're doing today. The bad guys have a very high, fast education and implementation rate, much faster than us getting a budgetary plan in place. They're going to beat you with it as fast as they can. So more layers are going to be coming. We're going to be doing more things, and I don't want to get it too deep into, multiple layers of everything. Just understand that what we've been having and what we've used up till this point is up to this point. It's going to change. If I told you what I would have told you in 2019, that has absolutely nothing to play in 21.
Yeah.
So with that, I'd like to spin it back around, and we can talk about controls, budgets, and risks if we have time.
I am just
Jim,
I'm curious.
Oh,
I'm curious on the three with regards to 3 points and the layers. Jim and Sven, is this consistent with the best practices that you guys are hearing in the industry? Started with Jim last time. Sven, multi-layered, 2 layers, user, outside, inside, and user. David is suggesting 2 on each. Is that? Have you heard this? Have you heard something similar? How about Sven? Have you heard that?
Yeah, it's basically what we are doing here also to implement those things like mail filter, different mail filter, not only one. Also firewall systems in different layers, outer and inner firewall, in firewall in hotels direct, also VLANs where we can do it. And what we are also trying to do is all network systems to connect to our switch infrastructure to have a better look to the network in the hotel. I think it's also important in the old days when you look to an hotel, there are 3, 5, 6, 7 switch infrastructures for each vendor, one for a POS system, for CCTV, for whatever, and each one have built its own switch infrastructure. But you don't have a look to it where it's what is going, and this is what we are doing or what we have done in the last years to migrate all to one infrastructure where we have an eye to.
Great, good. Jim, similar thoughts on the multi-layer, the 3 points?
Yeah, similar thoughts. Absolutely, they are very timely. They're the things that we're focused on now. I guess timely being the thing. I mean, the bad guys are, they're working out of war rooms and they work 24/7.
They have the element of surprise too, right?
Yeah, they absolutely. And that's what we're trying to get the rest of the C-suite to understand, is that this is a never-ending conversation. You're going to get tired of me talking about it, but sorry, it doesn't ever go away. And just constantly staying on top of it. And then not only are we industry experts, we're industry victims, I think, which really forces us to hone our skills better. Every time we have something happen to us, we ratchet it up to another level. But yeah, it's never ending. So, and all good solid points. You got to have some place to start, and to be able to convince the people that are holding the money how to get them to understand the size and the scope of this.
Well, on that subject of money, we are approaching the half-an-hour mark. I'm going to put David to the test if he can do this last one. We see budgets. That's a big topic. You got a $2.5 million painting in your man cave. What's the budget for that, and what controls are appropriate? Is there an equation to figure out controls, budgets, and risks?
Well, the first thing, and the reason number 6 is those are the 3 things that I feel a good IT at a C level, you need to have those 3 things. You need to understand the risk. The risk is what happens if somebody steals my painting? What happens if somebody damages the painting? They're not taking away with it. They're just going to damage it. That's the biggest thing now is theft of data is one thing, but the manipulation or the non-security of the data being manipulated, that's the big thing now. You have to look at the risk. What is the risk that you could possibly have? That's going to give you a number. That number you need to offset by your budget and look at the budget and say, I've only got $100,000 to protect a $10 million or a $250 million painting. What is the best controls I'm going to be able to implement for that? Now, that may be that this year. That doesn't necessarily mean that control is going to be worth that. You know, if I'm still hanging on to my McAfee antivirus that I got out of the back of a catalog in the 90s, that control is no longer working for me. So you can't have love affairs with your vendors and their controls, because if they're not keeping up, that control may be a cost that is no longer providing the risk acceptance that you need in order to give to the C level. So you always have to be looking at those 3 things. Your risk can go up. Going back to the old days, we didn't worry about people stealing 500 gig of data because it would take a hard drive the size of a refrigerator, and it would take weeks to copy it. Well, that's not true anymore. We can put all of that in a USB drive and walk out the front door, just like bad people have done in the past. They walk out with a USB key and they've got all your data, you know, time lock it, and boom, now you're ransomed out, but they've got all your data on a USB, or heaven forbid they got in via somebody dropping a Trojan on a workstation, exfiltrated all your data, and now they ransom you, and now they're saying either pay us money or we're going to expose all your secrets on the internet. That is a risk we didn't have 5 years ago. We didn't have it really 3 years ago. So the risk is changing. Hopefully the budget isn't the same as it was 3, 5, 7 years ago, but our controls need to change according to the risk factors that we are facing. And that is a moving number. If we were Fort Knox, our budgetary for controls is much higher because we're protecting different things. If we're in a hotel, it's going to be those things that have PI data. It's going to be all of the user information that we have in-house. What is the value of that? Well, flip that around. What would we be sued for if we lost it? Start there. That'll give you a number. If you need help with that, we can provide you some spreadsheets that will give you what you would be penalized for if that data was breached. That'll give you a scare number to go back to the C level and say, okay, we have not a $260 million painting. We have a $10.5 million database sitting here on this workstation, and everybody in this building knows the password to get into it. Maybe a problem. So that's where you can start looking at the risk versus budget versus controls.
I don't know if the others that are watching this webinar are experiencing the same thing, but I love watching Jim's reaction to the things that you're saying, because when something, you can just see his eyes sparkle. He's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. So one of the things that early on you were just saying, David, you were talking about, you know, talking about the McAfee that you got 10 years ago out of the back of a catalog, etc., and the changing landscape of threats. Jim, you just mentioned that it is an ongoing conversation. You're not, you know, you're going to get tired of hearing me say it. Do you feel, Jim, that others in leadership get it more now than before, or is it the same? You know, are you fighting that same fight where you're like, no, guys, this is important. It is a moving target. We need to keep ratcheting up. Do they get it, or is it just you hitting the same brick wall every time?
I think it has changed a lot in the last year. I think the COVID thing drove a whole bunch of conversations around, you want people remote, we got to keep them secure, how are we going to do that? So they started learning more and more of the buzzwords. They all know what a firewall is now. Yeah. You know, they can relate to that and what its capabilities are. So I think I think COVID, the good side of COVID was, I think it helped us to have these conversations at a higher level. Yeah. And they understand the ability to be prepared. I particularly had some firewall upgrades that we just started them prior to COVID, fortunately. Otherwise, had we not funded that, we would not have been able to react as quickly with VPN capabilities at the level we needed them to be able to work remotely. So that was a great lesson for my folks to go, I get it now. I know why you were wanting to do those things. So I think it's better generally.
Good.
5 minutes on YouTube and it'll scare the daylights out of you. So
exactly.
Yeah. And I encourage them. I send them links often to, here, watch this little 5-minute video and see how easy this was.
The merchant of fear. Oh, here's another email from Jim.
That never hurts.
Terrify me.
Right. A little bit. You got to do it cautiously. But
Right. Very great. Well, we are a little over time, and we always want to be respectful of people's time. David, any final thoughts?
Well, I was going to say, if anybody has any questions or concerns about this, because depending on who's in the audience here, if you're an IT guy and you don't have access to the C-level, you may be facing risks and threats that they are unaware of, and that you need to, don't run in there, yell fire and watch them all run. You get to pull that trigger one time. But with that, you need to do your documentation. Reach out to us. I'll be happy to help you get some information of what you can use to go back into them with a plan to be able to put more controls in place. Controls don't have to cost $1 million. It could be maybe we just take that piece of tape that says what the password is on the monitor, and that will increase the level of control so that people don't all know the password by default. So there are some simplistic ways you can increase your security footprint, have a better layered security approach or defense in depth, however you want to call it, for not much money. But then there does become a point you're only going to be able to pull 2 or 3% unless you pull the big triggers. And those usually require a little bit of help, or, as Jim said, a C-level that understands we could lose it all. And bad things could happen unless we take care of it.
Very great. Great. That's a great way to wrap this up. Sven, Jim, so appreciative of you guys giving your time for us and keeping David honest. I appreciate you being here. It's always good to see you guys, and glad you're saying